Thank you, Katie. I'll try that again. General Statute Section 138A-15 mandates that the chair inquire as to whether any member knows of any known conflict of interest or appearance of conflict with respect to matters before the commission. If any member knows of a conflict of interest or appearance of a conflict, please so state at this time. Hearing none. Move on to the minutes. Did everyone have a chance to take a look at the minutes? Any changes to the minutes? Comments? Okay, hearing none. Do we have a motion on the minutes? Commissioner Carter moves to approve.
I wasn't here, so from that meeting, so I wasn't here either.
We're running out of people. Commissioner Deer Higgs seconds. Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, we don't have any concepts today, just one action item, the request for approval of proposed rule revisions to proceed to EMC for approval to proceed to public hearing on the revisions to allow electronic submittal of documents. And Katie Quinlan.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Katie Quinlan with the Division of Air Quality, and I'll be presenting our proposed rule amendments to allow electronic submittal of documents. So just for a recap of the background behind this rulemaking, some of the current air quality rules in subchapters 2D and 2Q currently require physical hard copies of correspondence, records, and applications to be submitted to the division. Other rules just don't specify the format of those documents and could benefit from some clarification. In addition to that, throughout the last 2 years in response to the pandemic, many of those records, applications, and correspondence have been received and reviewed electronically as staff work remotely, but the applicants still have to provide one or in some cases more than one paper copy as required by our rules. So DAQ is proposing amendments to 18 air quality rules in subchapters 2D and 2Q, and these are to allow electronic copies of these documents to be submitted where physical hard copies are currently required in the rules. And so these proposed rule amendments facilitate the department's transition towards streamlining and digitizing its permitting process and agency record storage. And that includes the following. So Laserfish digital document repository, and that'll serve as the location of official agency records through which public documents can be viewed remotely. A DAQ Premier compliance system for receiving records required by federal rule, and a DEQ self-service permit portal for receiving electronic applications and fees. So I'll briefly go over our amendments. The majority of the amendments are shown on this slide, and those are in these two rules, 2Q104 and 2D605. And these are, I guess I should say, the most substantial revisions, really. So in 2Q104, this is our rule that specifies how permit applications are submitted. And so what we've revised is we revised paragraph A, and that allows applicants to obtain those forms online or in hard copy format by request. In paragraph B, we're currently going to continue to require applications to be submitted in hard copy format until we make available a system for receiving those applications electronically, and that'll be outlined in paragraph C. So paragraph C allows applications to be submitted electronically, and for Title V applications, that has to be through a Chrome Air compliance system, and that will be identified on our permitting website. And for minor source applications that are submitted electronically, that just must be submitted as specified on our permitting website. And so that may be the same system that's identified for Title V permits, or there may be another method since those are not required to be submitted through a Chrome Air compliance system under the federal rule. And then in 2D605, this rule pertains to how other records are submitted, mainly compliance reports. And it really follows the same outline as 2Q104. In fact, it references a lot of it. So continue to receive them in hard copy format until we make available a system for receiving electronic submittals, and that'll be identified in subparagraph I2 of the rule. And then we have some other more minor changes throughout the rules. So in 2D103, we're replacing our regional office addresses with a reference to our DEQ website to obtain contact information, so addresses, as well as phone numbers, email addresses, and some management contact information. This allows us to update it more easily as well if, regional offices move locations or things along those lines. And then we've updated the URL for obtaining copies of the Code of Federal Regulations that are referenced throughout the rules. In 2D501, we've cross-referenced 2Q105 for viewing permits electronically. And we've replaced the requirement for original signatures in 2D546. We've revised method for obtaining a notification form, replaced options for the option to submit a copy of test reports, either electronically or paper copy. And instead, we just referenced our new rules that specify those requirements of how to submit those records. Made similar changes for regional offices, addresses, and some other rules. And we've revised the method of notifying interested persons about permit public notices, and that's to align with current practices. We don't currently, and we have not for a while, had anyone on the mailing list for permit public notices. Those are sent out electronically. So similarly, we've replaced regional office addresses in 2Q105, updated URLs, and made some clarifications around paper copies and how to reference, how to view documents electronically through Laserfish. We've added an option for electronic fee payments in 2Q206, and then made some minor changes regarding language just to add clarity in 2Q304, cross-reference as well to 2Q104 for submitting those application forms. We've removed throughout the rules any reference to multiple copies of applications. So moving forward, even while paper copies are still required, only one copy will be required since we will have to scan that and upload it to Laserfish. We can send out those copies to anyone who needs one. Again, we've removed requirements for multiple copies of letters in several rules, replaced DAQ mailing address with a cross-reference to some of our other rules. So really kind of streamlined everything to point to our new rule revisions in 2Q104 and 2D605. And then made some other minor changes in 2Q710 to replace mailing list with notification list, as we described earlier about no one being on the mailing list, and then clarified that charges only apply to requested paper copies. So we submitted the draft fiscal note for this rulemaking to the Office of State Budget and Management on August 23rd. In that draft fiscal note, we had estimated that the financial benefits would be minimal. So for the regulated community, those benefits would result from decreased paper usage, avoided postage costs, and maybe some savings in staff time for printing and mailing submittals. We also had estimated minimal financial benefits for the DAQ from savings and staff time that they would otherwise spend digitizing those documents that were received in hard copy format. And we did note that there are significant qualitative benefits from streamlining the record submittal process and increased access and quality of public records. We did receive feedback on this fiscal note from OSBM. They had some fairly minor comments. However, one comment led us to really dig into how much paper we receive annually. And when we dug into those numbers, we have come to the conclusion that we receive actually quite a lot. And so we are going to assign, and we are in the process of developing numbers to assign a financial benefit for the DAQ in the savings of staff time. There's still preliminary preliminary numbers right now, but we're in correspondence with OSBM and finalizing those numbers to incorporate into the fiscal note before approval by OSBM. So for a tentative rulemaking timeline, we presented the concept in March. Now we're bringing the draft rules to the AQC. Based on this timeline, we would project to be holding a public comment period late this year and early next year. And this gives us a tentative effective date of July 1st of next year. So with that, the director recommends that the committee approve the proposed rule amendments for presentation to the EMC for approval to proceed to public comment. With that, I can take any questions.
Any questions? Commissioner Lazork.
Thank you for that. It certainly seems like we need to be moving in this direction. I know it says still 2 hard copies until there is a site. Is the site expected to be up July of 23, like by the time the rule will be affected, or kind of what's the progress on that?
So the development of the Chrome Air compliance system is going to be kind of key in that. timeline. I think we would really hope that we could have something developed and approved by EPA by then, but we're really not sure that we will be able to have that done. I think those conversations are kind of just beginning to develop that system, and then we would still need to get approval. So that's why we've structured the rules the way they are, so that when we do get that approval, we can update our website and begin implementing it. But of course, we'll have to continue to receive hard copies until that. So at this time, I mean, we'd like to have it done by July. It may be another year or so after that. We'll have to see how things go.
And then once it is up and running, will the ability for people to submit hard copy go away? Like it will only be electronic at that point?
So under these rule revisions, they still have the option of submitting a hard copy. I mean, I think we would like to receive the electronic copies. There's a lot of benefit there, and I think that would be a largely used method of submitting them, but they will still have the option of submitting a hard copy if they choose to do so.
Part I was asking is I didn't know if the fiscal note should include potential costs of electronic access for people that don't have electronic access. Like, do we need to think about who submits these? Are there anybody who doesn't have internet access or doesn't have computer access? So we need to think about sort of any costs involved in them switching over to that, or like, do we have a sense of if it's going to be a hardship for anybody to switch to electronic that normally submits these permits?
Right. So I don't know if we have a sense of what kind of obstacles in terms of the cost of obtaining, more reliable internet access and things along those lines of being able to access our portal and submit them electronically. I think, that's part of the reason why we have kept the hard copy option, so that if that is the preferred option, someone can still submit it in hard copy. So there's no requirement that they submit it electronically. That would be their choice.
Commissioner Bailey.
Just a couple of questions. So right now the fiscal note is draft and it hasn't been approved. And then are you trying to put together more information to add to it?
Yes, so we submitted the draft fiscal note to OSBM. We received feedback, and then in addressing some of that, we kind of decided that we should assign a financial value, a dollar value to the benefits to DAQ for that staff time that they would save scanning. And so we are compiling those numbers and coming up with an estimate and revising that portion of the fiscal note. So yes, there will be a difference in that area of the fiscal note, but it's not been approved by OSBM. We've been in conversations with OSBM about this change.
So in other situations, we haven't approved going to public hearing, as you might know, unless the fiscal note has been approved. Do you have a timeline for getting it approved?
I think it will be pretty soon. I mean, I think, we are finalizing the numbers right now. We've been digging into them, kind of coming up with them. We're working on getting some firm numbers to put in there. And like I said, we've let OSBM know that this is a change that we're making and kind of discuss the path forward. So I would expect we will have it pretty soon, and I would say within the next month or so, but definitely, of course, by the November EMC, when we would be requesting to proceed to public hearing.
I see. Okay. And then the other question I had was sort of like the public who wants to look at records and they don't have internet access. Did I hear you say that sometimes you mail things out, hard copy, to people who request records?
So
did I hear that right or not?
So there is the option retained in the rules for someone to request a hard copy of these records, or to request to view a hard copy if they wanted to come in and view one. So again, we're kind of pointing towards this electronic system where they can view them, very easily and remotely. We think that will be the primary method that's used. And if someone requests a record, we could email them a copy of what is stored in our system. But if someone wants a paper copy, they can request that. And it's possible there may be a charge for that as laid out in the rules, or they can come in and view something in hard copy format in an office.
Okay, sure. I mean, some of the people are in rural areas that don't have good internet access, and they're not the kind of people that are putting permit applications together, for example. They just want to see something.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Deerhake.
Thank you. I have a couple of wording questions in the contents of the rule. And the first one, I think maybe our attorneys can tell me if they think this reads clearly enough, but on page 6 of 39 of the draft amendments, paragraph 2, lines 3 and 4, it says, reports shall be received by the division or postmarked no later than 30 days after the end of each calendar year quarter. I could see somebody arguing that the postmark has to be 30 days before the end of the calendar year, but there is no time limit on the general statement about received by the division. I just wondered if that sentence could be structured a little clearer so that it's a flat requirement that no matter whether it's electronically submitted or mailed, that it has to be 30 days after, or after the end of each calendar year quarter. Do you understand where I'm headed with that?
Yes, I think, if I understand correctly, the point is that whether the 30 days, the no later than 30 days timeline applies to just the postmarked applications or both the received by the division or postmarked part of the
It
sentence.
applies just to the postmark?
No, I'm saying that's the question.
That's
right?
the question.
Issue, right?
I mean, I understand you're probably saying 30 days for the electronic submittal too, right?
Yes, I think that the way that
Up to 30
sentence is
days.
structured, yes.
But I was just concerned that someone might read it and only think the 30-day requirement applies to postmarking and not to an electronic. So, does anybody else have an opinion about that? Does that read clear enough to you all?
Well, I think if it was a question to you, then it might be a question to other people. I might be able to resolve that by just rearranging the sentence to no later than 30 days after the end of each calendar year quarter, comma, report shall be received by the division in accordance with blah, blah, blah.
That's what I was thinking too. Yeah, just put a prepositional or some sort of a clause conditional up front.
Okay, yes, we can look at
Okay.
making that clarification to make sure it's clear.
And then the second and last comment I had about wording is on page 8 of 39, and it's line 5. And it says, after such time that the division makes available a system for receiving electronic submittals as identified in NCAC 0104C1, documents may be submitted in electronic format through such system in lieu of procedures in subparagraph 1. So that retains the opportunity for a paper submittal. So the word may is intentional there, right? Rather than shall.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's an option.
Okay. And as for the access to internet, I've been a big defender of maintaining newspaper public notices of pending permits. And in this case, I still argue the importance of having access other than electronic for the general public because of affordability and access to internet in rural North Carolina especially. So I support what the other members have said, and I think it's very important to keep that option available to the public.
Okay,
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Ms. Quinlan, could you go back one slide? Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve recommending this to the full EMC, or no, excuse me, to go to public. It was to full EMC to go to public notice.
Subject to completion of fiscal.
Yes. And this one revision, wording revision. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have a second?
This is Commissioner Bailey. I second.
Okay. Commissioner Bailey with the second. Any further comment on the motion? All right. All in favor, please raise your hands. It passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Quinlan. See, the Air Quality Committee will have 2 items on tomorrow's agenda for the full commission meetings. I don't think we need to go into any detail on those, but we'll just ask Director Abrazinskis for his remarks if he'd like to offer any.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. So a couple quick follow-up updates on DEQ rulemaking efforts. First, our Title V rule revisions, which were approved by the EMC back in May, passed through the Rules Review Commission and became effective on September 1st. You'll recall that most of those edits to those rules were in response to our Title V program review by EPA in 2021. And so, again, those rules became effective at the beginning of this month. We're also continuing to work on the concept that you all heard at your last meeting related to changes to our synthetic minor permit noticing requirements. We're anticipating that we will likely come back to the Air Quality Committee in November with draft rules pending us getting some final guidance from EPA on the direction that they are going with regard to federal requirements for and clarifications regarding synthetic minor permit noticing requirements. So we have not received any further guidance since our last meeting from EPA. And so we really wanted to make sure that whatever direction that we bring forward is aligned and we don't get out ahead of it in a way that's inconsistent with EPA. So again, our intent is to come back in November, but with the asterisk that we're still waiting for that federal guidance. Also in November, we anticipate coming back with the RGGI, Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative fiscal note as an agenda item, but we'll be discussing that with the committee and commission chair and council to determine whether that's an appropriate item for the committee to come back to the committee or come back to the full commission, given it's in response to a petition for rulemaking. We haven't had those discussions yet, but just flagging that we need to have those discussions. But again, at this point, we are on track to come back in November with that information and fiscal note. So that's a quick wrap on follow-up on rulemaking efforts. A few other quick items to give an update on some changes to our state's vehicle emission inspection program will become effective on November 1st. These were in response to a session law in 2020 that would removed Lee, Onslow, and Rockingham counties from that program. We had to go through an extensive process of revising our state implementation plan, submitting that to EPA, EPA reviewing and ultimately approving that plan. And then once that was approved, certifying to the reviser of statutes that process had been completed. And now DMV will be putting those changes into place and implementing those changes, again, to remove those 3 counties. And that'll become effective on November 1st. And I believe just yesterday, DOT/DMV put out a press release on this, and they've notified all of their garage owners in those particular counties.
What were the 3 counties?
The counties were Lee, Onslow, and Rockingham. Okay, and then just a quick NACS update and ozone update. First on the NACS front, just continuing to share the great news that we remain in attainment of all federal air quality standards in North Carolina, currently for 2,571 consecutive days and counting. So that's great news for public health and our economy. As far as ozone season goes, we've had a fairly slow season. That's great news. If the ozone season ended today, which it does not, but if it did end today, our design values, our highest design values in North Carolina would be at 64 parts per billion relative to the 70 part per billion standard. So we're building a much greater margin of safety with each year that goes by and lower ozone values. So we're thankful for that. And
Season runs to the end of September or October?
through October now, it's the monitoring season. Yes, sir. So again, and so that's why I was caveating that as of today, because in past years when the meteorological conditions were such that we had stagnation events in early October, a couple of years ago, we had several exceedances of the standard. And again, no violations, but exceedances. So again, so far though, everything's been looking good through the 2022 ozone season. So I want to share that good news with you today as well. On the staffing front, you've heard in the past about our rotations that we're doing for our deputy director position, while Michael Pagetra is on a detail to Division of Water Resources through the end of the calendar year. Mark Sawilla, who's with us today, he's our permitting section chief. He's currently serving as the acting deputy director through September 16th, and then starting on September 19th, through the end of the calendar year, Taylor Hartsfield will be serving as acting deputy director on a career development rotation. She currently serves as our Raleigh regional office supervisor. So we're excited about that opportunity for her starting in mid-September through the end of the year. And then behind that one, we'll have a whole series of trickle-down rotations from there that I won't list off today, but there'll be a lot of shuffling going on through the end of the year and into next year as well, as we continue to give staff opportunities to gain some experiences through these career development rotations that last anywhere from 3 to 6 months. Big part of our succession planning and continuity planning efforts. As you know, our division demographics are heavily skewed toward the retirement end of the spectrum, and all that while we're weathering about 35 vacancies currently across our division. So, you're going to start seeing a lot of new faces, but the good news is, since we've last met, we've actually been able to hire a few new faces in some of our offices. And in one of our regional offices where we were able to fill 3 positions, I think they said it felt like Christmas to have 3 new people on board to help out. So we're slowly chipping away at it. Again, I think we're at about 35 vacancies today.
That's 35 out of what total?
35 out of 203. So, and again, we're working to fill, as you heard in the last meeting, Patrick Nolson, our Rules Development Branch Supervisor, retired. So we're working to fill that position currently amongst those vacancies. So that's probably all that I have for today, but I'll be glad to take any questions that you have.
Any questions? Commissioner Deerhage?
In terms of staffing, I have a question. The department has benefited in the past from people retiring from the public health service or detailing from US EPA, since they're so closely located here. And are we seeing any interest, or is that being explored to look at federal retirees, because they can retire sometimes rather young in their career?
I would say that across our department, we're exploring every possible option, and you'll probably hear from every division director tomorrow at some point say something about this topic, because we're all in the same boat right now with a lot of vacancies. And I don't think any stone's being left unturned. I can't say that I can cite a specific example into our division currently, but we're certainly open to those, and we're also realizing, at least in one case, a former employee of ours that retired and came back part-time after the 6-month break that they had to take. So we're glad to have anyone with that level of experience come join us in any form or capacity, temporary or full-time.
Is that detail program or that exchange program still active between federal and state?
I believe so, but I would probably want someone from the department to speak a little bit more to that. I'm maybe not fully up to speed and best equipped to answer that in detail.
Where would someone interested in a position go to find those? If there's anyone out there who knows someone to refer to.
Absolutely. You can Google North Carolina jobs, bring you to OSHR's website. If they're specifically interested in air quality, they can reach out to me, any of our current staff members, to you. We will get them pointed in the right direction to find where postings are. We have a few currently posted externally, but I think there will continue to be opportunities posted externally for our division and really all divisions within the department.
And Commissioner Wazorek.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if there's been any movement or ideas for how to get salaries, more competitive to, as I know that that's been a hindrance across DEQ in general. And would it take legislative action? Like what would it take to really improve that?
Yeah, thank you for the question, and it's a priority. It's no doubt a priority for our department as a whole. And I should probably reserve, a more full set of remarks to someone at the department and the secretary's office to fully answer your question. But I can simply say it's a priority. We all have our salary administration plans. We're constantly reviewing them and revising them and understanding what it would take to bring people up to the minimum, much less to where they should be relative to their salary and performance. Relative to their experience and performance. So it's going to take a significant effort to get people to where they need to be, but we are certainly committed to making progress on that issue.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Director
Thank you.
Representative. The next Air Quality Committee meeting is scheduled for November 9th, 2022. Unless something major changes, we'll be back in here. Exact time to be announced. Thanks, everyone. This meeting of the Air Quality Committee is adjourned.